Before going into the topic details, I want to bring your attention to the UPSC coaching programs offered by ClearIAS. ClearIAS offers online and offline courses to help candidates get selected for prestigious government services like IAS, IPS, or IFS. ClearIAS Prelims Cum Mains (PCM) course provides a highly effective study plan, well-organized subject-wise videos, study materials, mock exams, and guidance to cover the entire GS syllabus of UPSC CSE prelims, mains, and interview systematically. As a limited-period offer, there is a 40% discount on our online courses. Enroll now.
And you know that the government in a democracy consists of three organs. And one of its organ is executive, isn't it? The other one being the legislature and the judiciary. So legislature, executive, and judiciary is what is constituting a government in a democratic form. And now we will have to understand about the executive. Now before that, just try to understand what is the difference between parliamentary and the presidential form of government. So it is on the basis of the relationship between the executive and the legislature whether we would be able to categorize it as parliamentary or the presidential form of government. Fine? It is on the basis of the relationship between the executive and the legislature. We will categorize whether the government or whether the model of government is parliamentary or the presidential form. Now, when you talk about the executive, it can be differentiated into two. Number one is permanent executive, and number two is political executive. Okay, so the executive can be categorized into permanent executive and political executive. Permanent executive are those selected by the recruitment agencies. Okay, selected by the recruitment agencies. Now, the political executives are not selected, they are just elected. So, one is selection, the other one is election. So, you may be understanding the difference. Permanent executive are those people, say for example, elected by the Union Public Service Commission, the Indian Administrative Service Officers, the IPS officers, the Indian Forest Service Officers, the Indian Postal Service Officers, the Indian Railway Service, Revenue Service Officers. All these officers comes under the category of permanent executive. They have a long term to serve the government. But that is not the case with the political executive. They are elected. Say for example, the President of India at the union level, the President of India, the Vice President of India, the Prime Minister, the Union Council of Ministers, they form the Union Executive. Now, at the state level, you have the Governor, the Chief Minister, the State Council of Ministers. So, they forms the executive at the state level. So, executive can be categorized into political and the permanent. The political executive consists of the President, Vice President, Prime Minister, and the Union Council of Ministers at the center. And at the state level, you have the Governor, Chief Minister, and the State Council of Ministers. Now, when it comes to the legislature, you need to understand that the legislature at the central level is the Parliament of India, which consists of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, isn't it? Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. At the state legislature, you may be consisting of State Legislative Assembly and State Legislative Council, not for all states, but at least for the 6 states in India, you have bicameral state legislature, that is, you have Assembly and Council. Now, we are trying to understand the difference between parliamentary and the presidential form of government. What is the difference? Sir, parliamentary form of government means it is responsible model of government. Okay, parliamentary form of government means it is responsible model of government. Now, what is presidential model of government? Presidential model of government is non-responsible model of government. So parliamentary model of government is responsible model of government. Presidential model of government is non-responsible model of government. Sir, now responsible model of government means what? Responsible model of government means executive is responsible to the legislature. Executive is responsible to the legislature. Now, non-responsible model of government means executive is not responsible to the legislature. So, responsible government means executive is responsible to the legislature. Non-responsible government means executive is not responsible to the legislature. So, how can you give an example? I'll give you an example. Say for in India, we have parliamentary form of government, which is responsible form of government. So when India is responsible form of government, our executive is responsible to the legislature, that is Prime Minister, and the Council of Ministers responsible to the legislature, that is Lok Sabha. In other words, it is on the basis of majority support in Lok Sabha, the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers remain in power. Isn't it? It is on the basis of majority support in Lok Sabha that the Prime Minister and the Union Council of Ministers remain in power. This is the reason why we say that India is parliamentary form of government and India is responsible model of government. But that is not the case with the presidential form, whether there is no sort of responsibility feature in the presidential form of government. Now, in parliamentary model of government, as the executive is responsible to the legislature, they are interdependent. Okay. Executive and legislature, they have got an interdependence in parliamentary form of government. Why? Because of the reason of responsibility or majority support. Now, here in presidential form of government, executive is one division, legislature is another division. There is no interdependence, but there is only independence. Okay, there is only independence. Now, as we are speaking about the Indian polity, we will have to understand about the features of parliamentary model of government. Okay, features of parliamentary model of government. Parliamentary model of government is also known as Westminster model of government. Okay, Westminster model of government, or parliamentary model of government is also known as prime ministerial model of government. Prime ministerial model of government, or in other words, parliamentary form of government is also known as cabinet model of government. Cabinet model of government. So, different names of parliamentary model of government is prime ministerial model of government, Westminster model of government, as well as cabinet model of government. Now, what are the features of parliamentary model of government? Number one is presence of real and nominal head. Presence of real and nominal head. What does this mean? Sir, you have two heads in the parliamentary form of government. One is the Prime Minister. The second one is the President of India. Isn't it? So you have two heads in the parliamentary form of government. One is the Prime Minister of India. The second one is the President of India. So the Prime Minister is the real head and the President is the nominal head. The Prime Minister is also known as the head of the government. Head of government. The President is known as the head of the state. The Prime Minister is also known as the de facto head. De facto head. De facto head means actual head, real head. Okay. President is also known as de jure head. So PM is real head or actual head. The president is de jure head. PM is de facto, president is de jure head. Fine. So the first feature is presence of real and nominal head. That is two head, Prime Minister and the President of India. The second one, Prime Minister is also known as the head of the government. The President is known as the head of the state. Prime Minister is known as the de facto head. The President is known as the de jure head. Feature number one completed. Second one. Second feature is collective responsibility. Collective responsibility. What do you mean by collective responsibility? So collective responsibility means the Council of Ministers, they are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha, which means suppose if the majority support is lost in Lok Sabha to the Council of Ministers, what will happen? The entire Council of Ministers will collapse. Now, the Council of Ministers may be consisting of Lok Sabha members as well as Rajya Sabha members. Now, can the Rajya Sabha members say that the majority was tested in Lok Sabha? We will remain as the ministers. You go down. Is it possible? No. The entire Council of Ministers will collapse. They will swim and sink only together. That is what is the bedrock principle of parliamentary form of government, which is known as the collective responsibility. The bedrock principle of parliamentary form of government. Get it? Got it? Now, the third feature. The third feature is double membership. Double membership. What do you mean by double membership? Sir, the real executive authority is the Council of Ministers. Isn't it? In the parliamentary form of government, the real authority lies with the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers are part of the legislature as well as the executive. Mr. Modi, he is the Prime Minister. As the Prime Minister, he is part of the executive. As the member of Lok Sabha, he is part of the legislature. So the same minister is part of the executive as well as the legislature. So that is also one of the feature of parliamentary form of government, that is double membership. Okay. Now, feature number 4 is majority party rule. Majority party rule. So it is quite familiar for you. This is the election time. So the majority party or the majority, the party which gets the majority seat in Lok Sabha is going to rule the country, and that is what is majority party rule. So the fourth feature of parliamentary form of government is majority party rule. The fifth one is the leadership of the Prime Minister. The leadership of the Prime Minister. The leadership of the Prime Minister. The fifth one is the leadership of the Prime Minister. And the last one, the last feature, which is very, very important, is dissolution of lower house. Dissolution of lower house. So the 17th Lok Sabha has got dissolved. Why? Because the next elections are coming. Isn't it? The Lok Sabha, the lower house has got dissolved and you have the next election. So automatically at the end of 5 years, the lower house will get dissolved. Fine. So which are the features? Number 1, presence of real and nominal head. Number 2, collective responsibility. Number 3, double membership. Number 4, majority party rule. Number 5, leadership of the Prime Minister. And 6, dissolution of the lower house. The features of parliamentary form of government. Now, when you talk about the President of India, the President of India is, as I have already told you, the head of the state. He is the constitutional head. Constitutional head of India. Okay, constitutional head. He is also known as the first citizen of India. First citizen of India. Okay. So the President of India is known as the head of the state. He is the constitutional head. He is the first citizen of India. Now, what is his role, sir? What is the role of the President of India? Sir, he is only the nominal head, which means he does not possess vast range of power. No, he is just a symbolic head. Okay, he is just a symbolic head in such a way that he will have to act upon the aid and advice of Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. So he does not possess individualistic powers. He will have to aid, he will have to get the support, get the advice from the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, and it will be only on that basis the President of India will be performing his duty. So he is just only a symbolic head. Fine. Now, the election of the President of India. Okay, the election of the President of India. The voters in the election of the President of India is the elected members of Parliament, the elected members of State Legislative Assembly, the elected members of Legislative Assembly of Delhi and Puducherry. So there is a special electoral college constituted which consisting of the elected members of the Parliament, the elected members of the State Legislative Assembly, and the elected members of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi and Puducherry. So this is the electoral college of the President of India. The removal of the President of India is known as the impeachment. Okay, the removal of the President of India is known as the impeachment of the President of India. And in this impeachment process, all members of Parliament can participate. In the election process, it was only the member of, in the election process, it was only the elected members, isn't it? Only the elected members of the Parliament, the elected members of the State Legislative Assembly, the elected members of the Union Territory of Delhi and Puducherry. Now, in the impeachment process, all the members of the Parliament can participate. Fine. Now, when it comes to the Vice President of India, he is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. Ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. What do you mean by ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha? So, he is not a member of Rajya Sabha. Okay. He is not a member of Rajya Sabha. But he is the person who will be sitting in the dais and controlling the activities in Rajya Sabha. He is not a member. He is the person who will be sitting in the dais and controlling the activities of Rajya Sabha. And it is in the absence of the President of India, the Vice President becomes acting President of India. Okay, acting President of India, maximum for a period of 6 months. Okay, for a maximum period of 6 months, the Vice President of India will be the acting President of India. So he has two functions. One, to preside over Rajya Sabha. Second one, to be the acting President of India in the absence of the President of India for the maximum period of 6 months. Now, when it comes to the Prime Minister, okay, when it comes to the Prime Minister, he is the real executive authority. He is the real person who has the power, unlimited power. And that is very, very crucial in a parliamentary form of government, that it is the Prime Minister who is having the real authority in his hands. But what the Constitution says is that under Article number 75 says that the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President of India. That's it. The Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President of India. Sir, how should the appointment be done? Sir, that is not provided. That is not provided in the Constitution. But we are following the parliamentary convention in which the majority party in the lower house will get a chance to form the government. It is not constitutionally provided. We are following the Parliamentary Convention in that. The Constitution has only provided that the PM shall be appointed by the President of India. That's it. But we are following some parliamentary conventions in such a way that the majority party in Lok Sabha will be given a chance to form the government, and the leader of that majority party will be the Prime Minister of India. Now, it is the role of the Prime Minister to choose the members in his team, and that members will also be appointed by the President of India. So the Union Council of Ministers will also be appointed by the President of India on the aid and advice of the Prime Minister. Fine. So the executive at the union level is the President of India, the Vice President of India, the Prime Minister, and the Union Council of Ministers.